Smooth shading and sharp edges. This is what started me down the path to making these Blender Bytes classes. My friend Tenbears Running was using a program in Second Life to make simple optimized mesh pieces and then bringing them into OpenSim. Some low poly columns that he made for a steamboat had an annoying glow near the top. We brought the mesh into Blender and found the problem existed there as well. You can see that the cylinder looks brighter at the top and the reflections off of the cylinder look kind of funny going down towards the bottom. This is what Tenbears called glow. Well, what caused this effect was that the mesh making tool that he was using marked all the faces of the cylinders as smooth shaded. And smooth shading is a really wonderful tool that uses the normals of the surfaces to blend the way light reflects from one facet to the other. We could turn smooth shading off, but we have to be in edit mode. And we have to select the whole thing. We could turn smooth shading off, but then we have a column that looks faceted and we want it to look smooth around it, but we don't want it to look smooth from the side to the top. So one way to do that might be to, here, let's put it back the way, this is how we found this object. One way you would think to get rid of this problem would be to turn smooth shading off on the top and only leave it on the side, because that sounds like what we want. We want the top to be flat, we want the sides to be shaded smoothly, and this does work for the top. It now looks the way we expect the top of a cylinder to look, but the sides of the cylinder are still attempting to smoothly shade, and so the shading is gently changing towards the top, and then whoops, once it gets to the top it does the job right, but it's not doing the job right on the side. So another way that you think should fix this is that there's an option called mark sharp. Okay, so I'll mark this edge as being sharp, and then I kind of expect Blender and OpenSim to realize that there's a sharp edge here, but it doesn't work. As a matter of fact, I haven't figured out what mark sharp even does, but even inside Blender it doesn't do what I expect. When I figure out what it does, I'll let you know. So let's clear that because it's just confusing. But one thing that we found does work, and we learned this by bringing some cylinders in from OpenSim, because we know that cylinders in OpenSim don't have this funny problem. So why is that? And we found out that if we take a cylinder that was made in world and we try and take the top off of it, the top comes off. But this cylinder, the top doesn't come off. Let me show you that if I try and move this top, the whole cylinder moves. The top is an integral part of the cylinder. But there is a tool called split. It's in the mesh menu, the split command, and you split whatever you have selected. And now, if I were to try and move that top, it comes off. And so now there's a more tenuous connection between the side and the top, and so the shading looks better now. And of course, in order for this to work perfectly, we have to split off the top and the bottom. So let's select the bottom, split selection, and now it's hard to tell because it's so uniform, but the cylinder is still shiny. It's kind of a matte shiny, but it reflects light in the way that we expect a cylinder to. And now we can export this object to OpenSim, and it will look like what Tenbears expected, and it won't have that shiny reflection at the top. It also turns out that what we could have done is taken the top and the bottom of the cylinder and taken it away, and as a matter of fact, we could just delete it. Delete, you have to tell them what. Vertexes means delete everything. Select that bottom piece and mesh, delete, vertexes. So now we have a cylinder that is open at the top and the bottom, but in case you didn't know, in world, to save on processing power, polygons are only shown on one side. And if we were to actually able to see, which we can if we go into the overlays menu on the Viewport's menu bar, there's an option down here to show normals. So the normals show up as these imaginary blue lines, and they're all pointing out, and there's none of them pointing in. And so all of the polygons that are facing towards the camera are drawn, and the ones that are facing away from us are not drawn. And so if we looked at this thing in world, we wouldn't be able to see those back faces. But because this is a column that's going to be built into a steamboat, the top and the bottom are going to be buried in the floor and the ceiling, and we're not going to be able to see it, and we're not going to be able to tell that we don't have a cap on this cylinder. And so this cylinder will work perfectly well as a column in a building or a boat, and it will actually have fewer triangles and at least one fewer vertex than a cylinder that does have a cap on the top and the bottom. And so this ends up being very efficient and working very well in world. So I taught Tenbears how to bring his mesh primitives into Blender, split off the ends, or actually just delete them, and then save this back as a DAE file and use it in OpenSim. So this process of bringing something into Blender, making a slight change to it, and saving it back out again was very easy to do. And Tenbears commented that he thought Blender was difficult to use, but this process was very easy. Bring something in, make a small change, export it back out again, and you're done. So that was the inspiration for me to make a bunch of classes and a bunch of videos now of bite-sized things you can do with Blender.